Let us pray. Disturb us, Lord, when we are too well pleased with ourselves, when our dreams have come true because we have dreamed too little, when we arrive safely because we have sailed too close to the shore. Disturb us, Lord, when with the abundance of the things we possess, we have lost our thirst for the water of life. Stir us, Lord, to dare more boldly, to venture on wider seas, where storms will show your mastery, where losing sight of land, we shall find the stars. We ask you to push back the horizons of our hopes and to push us into the future in strength, justice, courage, generosity, hope, and love. Amen.
Okay, fantastic. And for those that are here, but we're not seeing you, if you push the start video, we can actually see your smiling faces this morning, unless of course you don't want us to see you and you want to only hear. But I would love to see your smiling faces if you would be so kind. Okay. So I am going to share a screen with you. Can you all see that? Can everybody see?
Mm-hmm.
One moment, please. Aye, aye, aye. Come on. Oh, no, 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 I don't want there. One moment, please.
Go over to slideshow.
I know.
There you go.
I know. I was just, okay. So what's going to happen right now is that we're going to have, you're going to be part of one or two presentations depending on what you would like to do today. And Michelle Rackison will be watching for anybody that's coming into the waiting room. And Davy Gerhardt is going to be looking at the chat. So at the end of each of these slides, if you have, as I'm going through this process today for each slide, go ahead and if you have a question or a comment, put it in the chat. Davy will be in charge of looking at those and then bringing the questions or the comments to the group as a whole. We're going to be going through these and taking some time. We've allocated a lot of time because this is a very different environment that we're all in right now. So from 10 to 12, it's all about relationship. We're going to have a break from 12 to 1. If you want to stay, and be and have lunch with myself and the program group and just freely ask questions, we'll be having lunch together from 12 to 1. So you can stay on if you'd like. And then from 1 to 3, Davy is going to be walking you through a little bit more in depth about relationships and then the different platforms for online giving. Davy, do you want to give a little preview of what you're going to be doing from 1 to 3?
Sure, a little teaser. So we'll pick up with relationship and talk specifically about some best practices in relationship management, lessons we've learned from our nonprofit brothers and sisters that are very good at donor-centric relationships. We'll talk a little bit about that, and then I will review several of the most common tools for virtual offering plates and online giving. We'll talk a little bit about why they are, what their strengths are. We'll talk a little bit about what their costs and fees are and how you can integrate them. I know a little bit about a lot. I don't know everything about every virtual offering plate, but I can answer a lot of questions and get information for you about that. So if you're ready to stick through the whole day, we're ready for you.
And if you can't, no worries. We're recording these. We'll record them as 2 separate sessions. We will not record the luncheon conversation, just so people can, say what they need to say, unless you think we should, but put that in the chat. And then again, we'll be saving the chat as well. Hopefully, one of the hopes of this day is that out of the questions you bring forward as we're building this plane, as we're flying it, and because everybody that's doing stewardship is literally building the plane as they're flying it right now in this time, we will develop a couple of other half-day or 2-hour programs for you on various Saturdays coming up, and we'll give you those dates later on. So if you're ready, let's go. And feel free if you need to at any time to take a bio break, okay? Just letting you know. So it's literally all about relationships. But there is an elephant in our room. There is an elephant in the room. Oh, and let me just say this as we have one more person waiting. If you need translation, first of all, you need to select your language at the bottom of the screen. And so I noticed that Roberto Lima too came on. Roberto tiene que cambiar su lenguaje a español, okay? Ada Ramirez, would you come on the English line and remind people how to do that in Spanish, please? Yes. Okay. No, I just said that everybody should pick. Could you read the chat, please? Okay, thank you. All right. So the elephant in the room for all of us is it's a pandemic, but more it's civil unrest that's going on. So there's layer upon layer upon layer. Now we're entering potentially into fire season again. It's not the same for everyone right now. So let's talk about what's going on and where are we as the church. So we'll open up chat for people to kind of put their thoughts down about where they are or how they're doing, how they're feeling. So use the chat and Davey will monitor that chat. Davey, anything in the chat?
We just got a message from Jose Zambrana from St. James in the City. The first the pandemic felt overwhelming, and now the unrest. As you say, layer on layer.
Yeah, and our people are feeling this, and it affects our churches. It affects all of us.
Marsha van Valkenburg comments that at St. Andrew and St. Charles in Granada Hills, they've kept great communication with their parishioners, and that this is, they're waiting for more advice from local and federal leaders, but communicating is how they are staying on top of this.
Good. Good.
Julie Bryant reminds us that all of the unrest and pandemic, they're both important. It's not either or, it's both and they can't be unwound from each other.
Right. Thanks, Julie. That's perfect.
Cecilia Schroeder wishes that we could have in-person conversations about this in church, going back to our communities to be able to talk about this, or host a prayer vigil for the community.
That's a fantastic idea.
Catherine Jarrow at St. Stephen's, Santa Clarita says not only the pandemic and unrest, but also unemployment, job insecurity, uncertainty, and the economic situation. Many layers.
Exactly.
Julie Che reminds us this is a new opportunity for justice. Definitely.
Is that Julie Che from Messiah Santa Ana?
She doesn't say, but perhaps. Megan Oberly from St. George's in La Cañada. She's reminding us that people are being brought closer together because of the adversity and strife. And I think that's one of the strengths of church in general, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Alfonso Lemus says that they have a grateful and generous congregation at St. Gregory's that have continued to support their ministry. They're finding that reaching out electronically, virtually, as well as by mail is helpful. Let's not forget that some people still check their mailboxes, their physical ones, and that's an important way to reach out. We have a perfect reminder that Sir Francis Drake prayer was perfect, and a reminder for Black Lives Matter. James Seepel and St. Paul's Lancaster, they have an interim priest who started in the last week of January. It's a difficult time to start a new ministry, but they are building up financially so they can afford a full-time priest. So the bottom fell out just when they were starting to do that work.
Right.
Susan Scranton in Glendora, they're having a prayer vigil this Sunday. Susan, do you want to tell us more about that or how we can get connected maybe? Anne from St. Thomas of Canterbury in Temecula. She's here from the East Coast near Washington, D.C., where folks were afraid to go out due to the virus and pandemic, and now due to the civil unrest. So people are already staying at home, and now we're even more afraid to go out, she's reminding us. So that's something we need to think about too. Our world keeps getting smaller.
Right.
David Miklos from St. Paul's in Lancaster maintained close communication with the congregation through phone trees and online services. Diane, I think you talk about this later when you talk about how we are reaching out to all of our congregants and all of our clergy. That's it for now. We're caught up.
Perfect. So this is the backdrop and the context for how we're to do and deal with stewardship in the months, and really we're talking about potentially years to come. So it's that backdrop, this elephant in the room, that we're dealing with as we're talking about all the things we're going to be talking about today. So now we're on the same page. Okay. So, oh, did I skip one? There's a reformation in relationships. People are hungry, absolutely hungry to connect. People want to hear the good news. People are finding us online. And people know the world is changing and want to know and want to see how the church is keeping up. And the only way to do that is to connect, connect, connect. All of you know, in the phone calls that you're making, in the way your church is reaching out to you, or if you're a clergy person or on a call team, the way you're calling and reaching out to people. At the beginning, it might have just been a quick check-in, but as time goes on and we've been and the stay in place has been going on longer and longer, and some of us are still on stay in place, what ends up happening is those conversations get longer, right? You might be feeling that, you might be experiencing that because people are hungry to connect. Anecdotally, we've heard over and over that there are lots of people coming into our churches that either coming back to our churches or coming in as we're doing things online with them that we haven't seen for a while, or that we don't know or haven't encountered before. So there's actually more people online with us than there normally are butts in the pews on Sunday morning. So part of what we're going to be talking about is how do we capture this piece? And we're going to go over that a little bit. Any questions here or comments?
Some comments from folks. St. Ambrose reminds us that they have a great community. They're missing Sunday services, but Zoom, as you just said, is keeping people in contact, and more friends and people are able to gather because they are virtual from places that aren't maybe where they would be on Sundays. There are a couple of questions or comments people want. Perhaps this relates to the previous slide of the challenges that we're facing with the financial uptick that some congregations are experiencing as they have to rethink technology, spend more money on Wi-Fi at a time when they've lost income from rentals or other facilities. So the struggle in congregations is real in terms of finances. It's not just about stewardship, but it's about all the ways that our income streams are strained right now and some additional expenses that we're having to take on in the pandemic. So I think we need to think about that when we think about our stewardship.
Exactly, and we'll be touching on that a little bit later, I think, and then if not, we'll do that in the noon hour when people grab their sandwich or whatever they're going to have. And
Great.
stay on, okay. So the new basics. We've got to keep in touch with all members of the congregation. We've got to. This is the only way we're going to get through this, and we're going to navigate these waters. Sometimes it's phone calls, sometimes it's emails, and in the emails it's newsletters keeping people informed of what's happening at church and in the diocese. You know, just because the doors of the church are closed, I think clergy are busier now than when the church doors were open, just because the structure is so different right now. There's a lot more connecting that has to happen. The ministry of the church goes on regardless. And so how do we communicate that to the people that God has brought to us, and to the new people that God is bringing to us? And then Zoom and Facebook Live. I'm seeing more daily offices being done. It's almost as if during this pandemic, we've gone back into a form of monasticism in terms of keeping the daily office. There are multiple opportunities every day that I see online, and sometimes I go in and participate in them when my calendar allows me to. And it's really fascinating to watch and see how many people are coming online at those moments for that refreshment. We're doing things, of course, Sunday services. I'm seeing Bible study, coffee hour, fellowship opportunities. One church in particular hosted a talent show on Zoom, a parish talent show on Zoom. And they had a lot of fun doing it. So, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to stay connected. And I think, Davey, you're going to talk later on about how people can do online galas and things like that, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So keeping in touch by phone, all right? This is just basic stuff and you all know it. People are absolutely hungry for connection. We need to ask how often people want to be contacted. Do they want to be contacted weekly, monthly, when something happens? Some people are just happy to know that we're there and don't need us on the phone with them all the time, all right? Other people really want that connection. And so what's the, you know, how do you make that determination? You can ask them. And you can also make sure that they know how to get in touch with you if something happens and they need to connect. Link people with specific needs. This is great in terms of if you've got people that are trying to start a book study or want to talk about knitting or crocheting. You could actually do affinity groups, set up affinity groups, and you can set those up for people. They can either set themselves up on Zoom, or you can do it in a myriad of other ways. Check in, catch up. I call people every 10 days to 2 weeks. I have a list of people that I call just to check in and make sure everybody's doing okay. So, and when we call and we can do this, we can let people know what's happening so they can still feel connected to the community of faith and to feel like we're still all together. And this is especially important for our members who don't like or have access to our online presence. We do have one of the great blessings of the Episcopal Church is that we've got an older, we have a significant older population in our denomination, which is a blessing because they also have stable incomes as retirees. But some of them don't like to do Zoom, don't like the computer, don't like things like that. So how do we connect with them and make them feel connected to the congregation? I remind people that don't have a computer or don't like to go on the computer that they can actually connect if you use Zoom through just the telephone. And if nothing else, they can listen to what's happening or listen to the service. So it's one way to kind of invite people in, okay? Davey, anything going on in the chat?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. Specifically about that phone connection, reminding people that our phone is a really good way to keep in touch with people, especially when Zoom may or may not work. So St. Matthias, for example, they've moved all their small group meetings to Zoom, and they're using their Stephen ministers to call more isolated members and talk through that. The Holy Communion connection through Zoom on Sunday services and Bible studies and other meetings. Arthur Toro reminds us that he's making phone calls and praying with people and thanking them, of course, for their continued support. And many people commenting that turnout on Zoom is way higher in average Sunday attendance than butts in seats. So it'll be an interesting parochial report, won't it?
Yeah, we're still trying to figure out, or there's still, the powers that be at 8:15 are still trying to figure out how that's going to go. I've just been encouraging people to put in pencil how many views you get. You can do that after a 24-hour period because people, if you put it out on Facebook, people still can see it later, and you get extra views. It's like extra credit.
Right. We have a great point from Joyce Davison, who asks us to be better about perhaps evangelizing our online offerings, not only for services, but also for the kinds of Bible study or game nights or things that we're doing. Is there a central place where all these resources are shared and can be communicated? We'd like to make sure that we get the message out as an opportunity for evangelism. Find new members who are hungry for virtual communities. So is there a way that we can be better about getting all that information out there to the press or on websites?
Hold that thought, because I think we're going to be answering that question between Davey and I as we go along. Right, Davey?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, this is fun. Everybody having fun? Do a thumbs up if this is okay. Is this all? No, do it on the computer so I can see you. Is everything? Okay. Can you know how you do the thumbs up on the computer? Okay, everybody's doing good? Okay. So far, so good, everybody? All right. Oh,
right. Kay Sylvester reminds us that we can boost our Facebook posts to get the message out there more easily. It doesn't take a whole lot of money. A couple bucks will boost a post and get it spread to a wider audience and trick the algorithm into expanding your network for you.
Thank you, Kay. All right. Moving on. We'll move on. So keeping in touch by email. newsletters, pictures of how people are staying connected. This is really, really important because it's really easy to take a picture when you're in Zoom of a group, right? You can take a picture and then post that post that in your newsletter so that people can see people in the Bible study. Oh, so-and-so's in that Bible study. I never realized that they were in that Bible study, right? And it's also a way to maybe get more people into a Bible study or a book group, something like that. Sharing information about what's happening at the church and in the diocese. People might think that the diocese is shut down through all of this. It's gotten a lot busier for all of us. And I know it's gotten a lot busier for all of you. Let's share what we're doing, share what you're doing, so that everybody can feel connected, all right? Always remind people that the work of the church continues. And on your weekly, if you do a weekly newsletter through the email, make sure you have an opportunity for people to give. So right there, reminding people that the church work continues with a donation button right there. And then that's really, really important. And Davey will talk about different opportunities or different ways to do that. I know St. Clement's and St. Clemente, for example, uses PayPal, and it's right there on their weekly email. And so it's just a great little reminder that here it is. Link to the congregation's website. Half the time I'll see something and I'll see a newsletter or something coming out, but no link to the website, no link to giving. Always give people the opportunity to be generous, because you don't know who might forward the email that you send to a friend because there's something interesting in there, and the friend's heart might be strangely warmed and they might click that donate button. So always give people the opportunity to click. And life is much better when you can click. Okay. All right, we're doing good time-wise. So link to daily and weekly worship. Make sure your links to all of that are in your emails so that people don't have to hunt for them. Make it easy for people to find you and find out what you're doing. Oh, are there any questions there or comments before we go on to here? Sorry.
A comment from Patricia Stanfield, who wants us to remember that as we regather and come back into in-person worship, there are some people who may want to continue using Zoom for Bible study or other things. And it's we don't have to leave these services once we've implemented them, just because we can gather in person again. I think that's a great comment.
And Patricia, you're stealing my thunder for what's coming up in a couple of points here. No problem. I mean, quite great minds are thinking alike on all of this stuff. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So,
and another comment that this is one of the best ways to serve our housebound members. I mean, we've always wanted to be able to do this, and now we are beaming into living rooms and to desktops and phones more broadly and more accessibly. So let's keep it up.
Exactly. And here on, especially the Zoom stuff, I am finding anecdotally, and I'm sure you're finding this too, when we gather, sometimes the clergy gather or clericus gathers or things are happening, I get more attendance on Zoom for meetings than I ever did in person. And that might be true for you, because people don't have to drive somewhere. Not only are we're saving gas and the environment, but it's much easier to be together quickly and share when we do something like Zoom. I prefer Zoom to GoToMeeting. I like the Zoom platform better. And you might be using something else. But just the opportunity to have people together in that way is really fantastic. And again, I get more participation doing it on Zoom than I ever did when we had in-person meetings. So what we're seeing on Zoom, and since my ability to do a visitation on Sunday has been thwarted during the stay put time, I've been able to drop in and see many, many services in many of our churches. And it's been eye-opening and wonderfully heartwarming. So, but also we're seeing that for some of them, they're including Sunday school and youth group services, other gathering opportunities. Where you've started isn't where you need to stay. So if you haven't started something yet, you can get creative and add a Sunday school component, add a youth group component, add a social seniors component, whatever you do. I'm dropping in on a Zoom coffee hour tomorrow. And so I've been invited into that, and that's going to be fun. So I can't wait to get in there and see it. But I think people are finding these ways to connect. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be here for the future. So, and I want to invite you to innovate, try, fail, and try again. You know, I keep on teasing some of the clergy that I want them to save off their bloopers from when they first started. There was one church in particular that the clergy person was filming. A service, but the way the camera was situated was sideways. So the whole service was sideways. It was really cute. So I think we need to save those blooper rolls, and I'd love to see something at convention, at our convention, about having a blooper roll of some of the best bloopers. Maybe you have one or two that you people out that are on the line now have one or two that they would like to share later. Okay. I'm seeing lots of Bible studies come on, and oh, I think La Magdalena just came on. So if that's Roberto Martinez, we might need to remind about the Spanish. Ada Ramirez, could you come on and remind people about the Spanish real quick? So like I said before, coffee hour, fellowship opportunities. I love that idea of that congregational talent show. Again, youth group activities, youth group can gather together there. Digital silent auctions and galas. A lot of the nonprofits are turning to this right now with great success. And so, again, on those silent auctions and galas, people can actually bid on things or make donations. And there's always that opportunity for that nice big donate button. Okay. Davey, do we have anything happening in the chat?
We do. Some great affirmation to what you're saying, that the new normal of accessing things online makes church online feel normal to people. So since we are gathering virtually or working from home, it's just natural that we're able to do church. So that's a good affirmation of the paradigm shift in which we are living right now.
Great, thank you.
Also, some great support for the blooper idea. I think that'll make a great convention role, and talked about this.
Good.
And finally, there are some questions about how we can gather these best practices in a place where we can remember them and share them. The best practices, not only that we're learning in conversations like this, but from the whole moment. Where can we house this information so that we can learn from it?
You'll see at the very end of this presentation, I talk about creating a shared resource library. And so what I would like to do is collect all of this and collect this information from the chat and start with all of your help building a library for us all that would be on the diocesan website for best practices, things that work, things that don't work, testimonials of things tried and failed, tried and succeeded, so that you can take what's in there and make it fit to your context. Because some things fit in one context, but they're not going to fit in another. So I think if we put a lot of different things out there, and store these things off as resources, you can kind of pick and choose. You know, it's kind of like picking your favorite library book. And so with your help at the end, we're going to do exactly that. Okay, Davey, anything else?
One question about how we can organize silent auctions and galas digitally.
Okay.
And then a question, will we be talking more about online giving, especially in small mission churches?
Yes.
The answer to which is yes.
And Davey, do you want to talk about the silent auctions and the galas real quick?
Yeah, sure. We can talk about it now for a bit, and it'll come up again at 1 o'clock or later. Silent auctions, there are many, many software platforms out there. And I'm not reviewing them in today's session because they're abundant, but we can definitely do a follow-up session later in the year. I know we're doing some more about these. But the option for doing a virtual auction, these have been in place for a lot of years now. Nonprofits have used them as a way to build up momentum going into a live auction, perhaps. So the tools have been there. Now they're being reshaped so that we can use them for this virtual world that we are living in. It is the same as any other auction where you do the legwork, or I guess now it's the finger work, to connect to donations in your community. And you advertise them, you put them up, and there are ways that people can bid in real time, and you can see things you know, getting momentum. And that can be over a span of time. Like you can say, we'll have a week-long auction where it builds slowly, or get everyone in a virtual meeting where, you know, it's intense and people are bidding and it's very exciting. There are other ways to do galas, and especially in churches or in church institutions that rely on galas, dinners, outreach events for their for part of their revenue or for their ministry revenues. We are looking at lots of ways to help congregations continue to do that. And again, our nonprofit brothers and sisters teach us how to do this by doing virtual events. So I've seen organizations that maybe run an annual gala. Now they're still selling tickets, but your invitation is to stay home and wear your fuzzy slippers, not go buy a new dress, have a cocktail at home with us. And those are different ticket prices or tiers that you can offer in a virtual way. You can make it mission, so have people donate and see that in real-time building. There are lots of ways through virtual events that we can do that, and there are lots of software platforms to do that work. It's a really great way to continue doing special fundraising in a time where we are virtually gathered. We'll talk a little bit more about it later in the day.
Thank you, Davey. And I think what I would add to that is if there's a lot of interest in us particularly addressing that in our next event, which will be in July, we can do the research and get that to you in a program like this in July. Right. So just if that is of interest, just say note it in the chat. And we'll get
yes, definitely. We're getting a lot of interest in doing a follow-on session to this. St. Mary's had a successful parking lot sale, garage sale in the past, and they're wondering how they can do that online. So yeah, I think there's definitely interest in us having a special session on this kind of fundraising.
Great, okay. Maybe depending on how we go through the day, maybe that becomes our next one. I would like you all, when we're done, to just send a quick note and then let us know, or we might just do a quick survey, sending it out to everybody, asking them what they would like again, okay? So we'll move on. So keep in touch by social media. Build a congregation Facebook page that has links to your website, and put things that are happening on your Facebook page. Use Twitter, use Instagram, use Snapchat. Among Chinese congregations, they would use WeChat. I mean, there's lots of different things for people to use to keep in touch. I'm not a fan personally of Twitter, and I'm on and off Instagram, but I occasionally do Snapchat, and every day I post on Facebook. I post where I'm, what I'm doing, where I'm at, which mostly now is home, and what I'm praying for. Maybe if you don't do that now, especially if you're a clergy person, just let people know what you're praying for every day so that they can join you in that prayer, and have the whole congregation be praying for maybe a specific ministry or person or things that are happening in our world. There's no better way to connect. So use that, use social media, okay? Davey, anything on the chat?
No questions about that, but Facebook has continued to pop up in this ongoing conversation and chat. So yes, please keep using it.
Digital Reformation. Now this is where I'm thinking that we will be living in 3 worlds once our doors open again. Not that they ever closed. They closed literally, but not virtually. We're going to be in person in our sanctuaries very shortly. We're also going to still be digital. We still will be doing some things totally online. And then we're going to have this hybrid, which is we're going to be in the sanctuary live streaming. So we're going to also be online. So how do you do stewardship? How do you do community when you're in these 3 worlds? We're living in 3 worlds at the same time. So and I was talking with somebody the other day. When we come back and do Holy Eucharist, and if we're live streaming, there's going to be a couple of things happening. We're going to be, once we can do Holy Eucharist again, there's still going to be people in our that are going to come to us digitally that are not physically present to receive the bread and wine. And there may be people in our pews sitting there that might not feel comfortable as we open up communion, coming up for communion. So one of the things I was suggesting is that we're going to have to come up with, or still have to use potentially the prayer for spiritual communion at the end of communion for those that either are with us digitally or are in the congregation that do not feel comfortable coming up. So we've got that piece to think about. And I asked Kay Sylvester to author some new offertory sentences for us in this digital and hybrid world the digital world we're living in now, and the hybrid world that we're stepping into very shortly. And she has wonderfully authored those, and we'll be having these. I'll show you these in a minute because they're in this deck, and they're just. I think they're going to be wonderful ways for us to bid the offertory sentence in a new way. And then at the same time, we've got to be able to give people the opportunity that are with us digitally to give. And so making sure that there's a link in the feed for online giving at that point is critical for us to connect. And Davey, I know we'll talk about a virtual offering plate this afternoon. So for people that don't want to necessarily touch or use cash, more and more people are moving to just using their phones instead of giving cash in paying for things. So, and then also in our digital Reformation, we've got to make sure that we're able to include information on what's happening in the congregation, in the community, kind of like announcement time every time we gather. And again, you've got to provide the opportunity for people to give. You have to. Davey, anything in the chat?
Nothing new, just great affirmations about using more platforms to communicate, making sure that people who aren't digital are connected, people who are digital are connected. Right. We're going to have to keep that in mind.
Right. And we're still going to have people that are going to want to write their check and put it in the alms basin, or the offertory, there, to put it in the basin, but also, or mail it in. But we've got to give them that opportunity. Okay, so we'll move on. Digital relationship building. We've got to work to capture online members by inviting them to meet via Zoom. Invite people to have a conversation with the clergy on Zoom for half an hour. You know, you're zooming into, or you see us on live stream. You want to know more about the church. All Saints Pasadena on their website has a like a virtual welcome package, so that you can fill out information, and there's lots of little brochures that are online for newcomers. So you can look there and take the best of what they're doing and improve it or make it your own. I like the idea of a conversation with the clergy, because that's how we start to really build relationships. And it's kind of like going back to the way church was in so many ways a long time ago. When I remember when I became an Episcopalian 32 years ago, when I signed that little card, next thing I knew, I got a phone call from the rector asking if he could come and see my family. And he came over to the house, and we had a cup of coffee and talked about the church. It's kind of like going back to that, but doing it virtually. Also inviting some of the people that are coming on the live stream or Zoom to maybe for worship, inviting them into a Bible study or a small group fellowship, especially if you find out what the person's interests are, the clergy person, or maybe it's not the clergy person that does this kind of new member incorporation, maybe it's another member of your congregation, can put them into a small group, because what we understand from congregational development, and I don't think that this is going to change unless somebody is kind of connected in some way within the first about 6 months of them being in a congregation, they'll leave. And so being able to invite them into something where it's an invitation to stay is always a good thing. And also, especially for the people that are coming at us via the live stream or maybe getting a link to our Zooms, but especially for the live stream people, the ability to get them to connect and deepen their faith through the offering of online Christian formation. So, you know, Christianity 101, Episcopalianism 101, whatever it might be, inviting them into those opportunities to learn and be formed as a Christian. They might not ever darken the door of your church, but right now they feel connected to you. And so it's trying to get them to stay in this connection that we're encouraging you all to do. And this is the ultimate form of evangelism. Inviting somebody, this is like inviting them to church, but they never have to leave their house. Does that make sense? Inviting people to a book group or a dialogue on issues of the day, a forum on racial injustice, whatever it might be, so that people can start feeling connected. And in different ways, and in different, depending on the kind of group it is, always an opportunity to give if people feel so moved. Questions in the chat, Davey?
Yeah, we're getting some great questions about how we create those digital welcome packs and how we do that. So we may need to do a follow-up session on that as we learn more about this. Yes. And two questions in Spanish, which I'm going to rely on our translator to translate my words, asking about Venmo and how that's used in congregations. And as we've determined, Venmo isn't a way that we can give on through our phones to churches any longer. After they were acquired by PayPal since January, they are not accepting any new applications for nonprofits or churches to use their platform for digital giving. If you are still on the platform because you'd set it up earlier, you may still be able to use it. but it's no longer supported for nonprofits and churches to use Venmo. This was part of the acquisition with PayPal. And so if you're still in, you're in, but you can't get it on, you can't join now if you haven't before. And how long you'll continue to be able to use it, not sure.
But PayPal is the alternative to that, right?
PayPal is the alternative, and PayPal is supported.
Okay. Was there another question in Spanish?
Those were it. They were about Venmo and the welcome packet.
Okay. So this is good. We're online galas and silent auctions, welcome packets. Great. This is great. Good stuff. Thank you. So there's going to be a reformation in stewardship. We know this, and we are building this plane literally as we are flying it. We're going to be having some monthly stewardship offerings. July 11th is the next one. August 1st is the one after that. And then September 12th. You are helping us build the topics today. And so we're already hearing a couple that we can put together for you to address your stewardship needs, especially as it comes to ways we used to be able to raise money to support our budgets outside of a traditional stewardship campaign that we can't do right now. And so these are the dates. Please, 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 please make note of those. We are partnering with TENS. You're hearing Davey, who is the new head of TENS, and also he works in the Diocese of California. So we're happy and very grateful to you, Davey, for being with us today. So we're working on this together and building this plane as we're flying it. We're strengthening online. We've got to strengthen our online presence. We are doing it, and we are inviting you to do it as well. The diocese is working on this a lot. The one thing we don't have, which is really interesting, when I asked about this a couple of weeks ago, and Michelle is working on this, our CFO, is ability for us to receive financial gifts through Facebook. And so there's a whole thing that you have to go through to do that. If you've done it for yourself, for your churches already, that's great. That's fantastic. Keep up the good work. But make sure people know that they can give, okay? Or that your membership knows that they can give. And again, online new member incorporation. We just talked about that a little bit, about how do we take these our online members and make them part of the community. And I really think it has to do with not only that online new member packet, but also or virtual new member packet, but also the one-on-one connections. And this is for the people that want to identify themselves. Not everybody is going to want to identify themselves. Maybe they just want to be an anonymous person in the like people that sit in the pew and never fill out the new member card, always skirt going out the side door so they don't have to shake hands with the rector or the vicar and never come to coffee hour. We all have had those in our churches. We still might have those digitally, right? But for those that do want to connect, we've got to give them that opportunity. And don't be afraid to ask questions of me, any member of our team, and I'll list our team members in a minute. But we're here to help you in all of this. And so just don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to share what you're doing with others. We can't be afraid of stealing sheep from each other because truthfully, there's more sheep out there right now than many of our churches can handle if they all came in the pews. So this is a wonderful evangelical opportunity for us all. And I think anecdotally, I've heard from other members of the House of Bishops that if we had actually tried to do this revolution through General Convention, it would probably taken 2 or 3 General Conventions to get all of this online stuff approved. But in a pandemic, it took less than a couple of weeks. So it's kind of like, this is why I'm saying I really think that there's this reformation, not only in stewardship, but in our entire church. So Davey, questions from the chat?
Some great affirmations to that we are in this new moment together, and that we're building it quickly. And this is great. Who says the church can't move fast, right? One question about, and it ties into what you were just saying, Bishop Diane, about new member incorporation. Someone asks if there's a way that if someone watches in a service electronically, if their information can be captured digitally or automatically, or if they would have to fill out some sort of electronic visitor card. I think you addressed this by saying we still want to honor people's right to be anonymous. And we can't with Zoom or Facebook, for example, track their email address, but you can certainly ask them to identify themselves.
Right.
Do you have more to say about that particular piece?
Well, on Facebook, it says, you know, it'll say like, let St. John the Divine know you're here, right?
Right.
The person has to do that, and it's an opportunity for somebody who's ever monitoring that to say, right, hey, really glad so-and-so you're here.
Exactly.
And if you see that a couple of times with that person, or maybe that same time, if you want more information about the church here, here's click here or whatever,
right,
or email da 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 da. So there's ways that we can actually invite people. Most churches during the announcement time, I did this when I was a parish priest, and the spiel went something like this: "Welcome to St. Clement, historic St. Clement Church. We're glad that you are here. If you want to know more about this historic church and its many ministries, outside on the stand out right outside the door is a book. Fill in your name and address, and we'll get you more information about the church right away. Please stay for coffee hour if you have time. We'd love to chat with you." Yep. What ended up happening there is, if I didn't say that at a service, I remember my members of the congregation would say, "You didn't do the, if you're new or visiting thing." And I said, because I know everybody in the congregation and there's nobody new or visiting. And so, but I think online we have that opportunity every week, because we can't always see, especially if we're live streaming, who's on. And so it's an opportunity to invite people to connect. Never be afraid to invite people to connect. Never be afraid to ask.
Great. Several people in the chat are talking about using Zelle in place of Venmo. Zelle is another platform. Most of big banks are using it, Wells and Chase and Bank of America, for example. It's not set up for smaller community banks or credit unions, for example. It's really been adopted by some of our larger banks. If you use it, use it. Don't say no to it. But it's also not available at every bank. So keep that in mind. A really good question. Now that we have online giving set up, what are the best ways to encourage people to make the switch? So I think this is something that we're going to need to keep talking about. Yes, finally, thank you, pandemic, for bringing everyone online. But how do we continue to encourage people being able to give online and make the switch? So I think we'll be talking about that later, and certainly need to keep talking about that.
Exactly. Never be afraid to ask. All right, moving on. There's 2 pages here of offertory sentences that Kay has written. And so I'll read these out. Oh, actually I can't, because I can't see the whole side. Michelle, can you read these out? Can you see the whole screen?
Oh, wait, no, I can move it. Let me move my chats and participants. Okay, so you want me to read? Oh my God, I love these. Oh wait, hold on one second. Oh shoot, wait a minute. I'm having a computer issue. Hold on, sorry. Okay, yes. All right, so the first one, let us offer our gifts so that God will bless and break them like holy bread and use them to nourish the world. As God loves us and offers us the gift of life and breath, so let us love God and our neighbor by offering our best. Let mutual love continue in the offering of our gifts. As Jesus fed thousands on a hillside from a small shared meal, let our shared gifts multiply and bring God's kingdom near. We offer for God's agenda the abundance of ourselves, our time, and our treasure. With gratitude, let us offer our gifts for God's blessing.
There's more.
Oh, okay. Creator God, gather our gifts from the four sacred directions as we give you thanks. Let us offer our gifts as seeds. May we plant and water them with God's help, and may God's grace yield a harvest of new life. With grateful hearts, let us give what we have. With joyful hope, let us give for what we can be. Let us love God and love one another by offering our gifts, the work of love. May God grant us generous hearts as we present our gifts.
So what do you all think? Good? Comments, Davey?
Affirmation that those are great and they're wonderful, fresh, new, relevant. Kay is a rock star, which we already knew, but always good to be reminded. Excellent work, and these are really incredible. We'll be talking about this certainly now, but also in the afternoon session about ways to make certain that that offertory, when we're doing things virtually, gets as much attention as it does when we are gathering in person. There's always this moment where we're moving through the church and gifts are being collected. And how do we find ways to do that so that it feels important and abundant in this time of gathering virtually? So you may have to think about that as you use these sentences and bring the gifts to our virtual altar as well. But wonderful, wonderful work. Thank you, Kay.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Kay. I called her and I said, Kay, would you feel about authoring new offertory sentences? And the other thing is, I'm also thinking for our folk that are going to stay with us only digitally, but also for the hybrid of in-church and live streaming, we might have to be authoring some new dismissals, way to dismiss people. Think about some of the collects or the closing prayers that we do, how they need to be shifted or changed or updated to reflect our new reality. So I think that this is going to be part of this ongoing reformation that we're all going to be going through. Okay. And then if Eric Law is on, is Eric on? Let's see.
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Eric, oh, good. You want to walk people through this?
Oh, I didn't know you were going to use this. So I was just playing around with a visual thing to help us remind us what is the currency that we have in cyberspace, as we move into a hybrid church of in-person, real place as in cyberspace. And we use, and these are the things that I could think of. We use cyberspace for worship. And that's often one way, mass media, and as many of you done that. For the smaller community, you're using two ways communication, more interactive medium. So you can see that in the green over here. So we do a lot of one-way communication, and then there are the interactive ones, interactive gatherings. Some of your worships are like that, and meetings and so on. And then there is the social media, and we talked a little bit about that, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all of that. And I don't know what to call it, whether there's mass media or two-way, but it's kind of weird. And then there's the recorded material. Something to remember is that when you record something, it's in the internet forever. So be careful. Even if you remove it, it might still be there, the footprint there. And often it's one way. So once you create it. And then here's the important thing. You have the internal network in terms of your cyberspace. Okay, that means if you have a Facebook group, that's an internal group. If you have a Bible study, that's an internal group. You need a password to get in and so on. And then there's the external face. So your Facebook page, your website is your cyberspace face, which is equivalent to people driving by your church in the neighborhood and see your church. Think about your external face in cyberspace that way. How do people see you? How do people connect with you? Do they connect to interactive kind of gathering? Do they connect with worship one way or interactive, or could they connect with recorded material or mass media one-way communication? Do they connect, what is your face in social media? So those are the kind of spaces in cyberspace to think about. And you need to kind of pay attention to all of them. The internal and external faces especially are very different. And you need to pay attention to that, especially in stewardship. How do people see you? How do people see your ministry who are not members of your church, but will support you? And that's a different kind of asking, a different kind of appeal than internal groups. Is that enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions or comments in the chat, Davey?
Nothing new about that. Thank you, Eric. That was really clear and always good. A couple things that have related to our previous conversation. I point everyone to the chat window to look at a beautiful adaptation of the Collect for the Dedication of a Church from Amy Pringle, who talks about how we can bless our own homes as worship spaces. Thank you, Amy. That's beautiful. And another reminder that people are still sending checks into church. So check your mailboxes. Even when you're not there, things are still coming to them.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Okay. So here's what we need to do. We need to build, and as someone said earlier, spoiler alert, I already had the slide. We're going to be building a library of resources. And we are each other's best library. So what I want to invite everyone here to do is, if you want to send to me what's worked, what's not worked, what you find difficult, what you find fun, what you find challenging, what you find that's easy to do or way too time consuming. And we can listen to each other and learn from one another too. So what's working for you? What help do you need? We can do this through chat. It might be best to do it in the chat. So or just if somebody has like something that they want to say now, or if you want to think about it and send me something later, that's fine. Let me see. We can, well, what do you want? What would be your preference, people? Do you want to talk about this a little bit now?
People are thinking about it.
I can see that. I can see that. Okay, you want to talk about, Amy Pringle wants to talk about it now. Okay. I got a thumbs up from Amy Pringle.
We're getting a combo. Some people are needing a break and some people are wanting to go forward.
Okay. All right, so let's go forward, but know that my request of all of you, the program group's request of all of you, is that you share your best practices, send them to me. We'll start building a library online, okay? I promise. All right, and these are the members of your program group on stewardship. So it's, and I put these in alphabetical order. I hope I did, if I remembered my alphabet. Myself, Brad Corellius, Eric Law, Margaret McCauley, Ada Wong Nagata, Rachel Nybeck, Michelle Rackison, and Susan Scranton. So any one of us can be if we can be of help to you. We're here, and we're just very, very glad that you were all with us today.
Bishop Diane, there's a question about where this library will be housed and how it will be accessed.
What I'm hoping to do is have it housed on the Diocesan website and under stewardship. and let it, and then we'll build it out there. Maybe Bob will want to put something in another place on the website. But if they decide to do it on another section of the website, we'll let everybody know. And Diane, I know Davey is building something for for TENS. CEEP, CEEP, the Coalition of Endowed Episcopal
Consortium.
Consortium. I knew it was this, I knew the C, but I couldn't figure out which C. Anyway, they're putting things together. So we'll be also putting links to all of these other sites that we're finding in terms of how people are building out stewardship. But for best practices for online digital hybrid, which is in person and live streaming, we'll start building that out and then putting that on the diocesan website for everybody to be able to pull down. Make sense?
There's a question about online music resources. Will those be a part of the library as well?
If people know of resources for music and they want to share those with me, we'll put those on as anything that people need or have, share, and then we'll build out that library, which I know will include music, it'll include liturgy, it's got to include a lot of different things, I think. But specifically for stewardship, we'll build out a separate section just for stewardship. Make sense? Okay. Now, what I want to make sure that we all know, okay, it's 11:16. Our next event begins at 1 technically. We can actually, if we're kind of done talking right now, if we're done with this part for all of you, we can stop now, take a break, make our lunches, and if you want to come back and have lunch with me in the program group at noon, you can do so, or you can, go off and do a lot of whatever else you need to do until 1 o'clock. All right. What I want to make sure people know is that this deck, this deck, and then the one that Davey will be working on this afternoon will be made available to you, and I will have them translated into Spanish. Okay. So that our Spanish-speaking congregations can do this as well. Can benefit from this as well. All right.
There's a question, one technical question about if we leave this virtual chat that we're in, do we have to log back in? Will we have to go back through the waiting room and all of that again? Michelle, maybe you can answer that.
Diane, how do you want to handle this?
You can, if you go out, you're going to end up back in the waiting room, and we'll just let you in. It was pretty fast for people to get in, right?
I think so.
Between Michelle and I, we've been really on top of making sure everybody gets in quickly. We've had 97 participants today. This is wonderful. Anyway, so if you just use the same link to come back in again when you want to come in. So if you want it, you can take a break now, make your lunch, come back and have lunch with me in the program group at noon to 1, and we'll open up so that people can just talk. We can talk amongst ourselves, and then we're going to be muting people again and using the chat for the afternoon session with Davey so that we can capture from the chat all of these great comments that are coming in, and to make sure that we have those. Okay?
There was one more comment. This is going back to music resources, if we want to continue on with this for a second. A reminder that the American Choral Directors Association and Association of Anglican Musicians are developing some great resources right now for digital music. And someone who wants to remind us that there are legal issues related to streaming and posting recordings. So be cognizant of that, and we may want to make a nod to that in any library that we're creating so that people don't get themselves in trouble. And Amy wants us all to know that Keith Yamamoto has the best hair today.
Oh. Keith, oh. Oh, okay. Yeah, there you are, Keith. All right. So this session will be posted on the Diocesan website, and we're in a stewardship section. Okay. And then I believe we'll also send it out to the in a resource roundup, so that people can pull it down that way if they get the resource roundup or the weekly update. And this is my little pitch for the weekly update. If you do not receive the weekly emails from the diocese and you would like to, please email Janet Kawamoto, JKAWAMOTO at ladiocese.org, and ask her to put you on the mailing list. Just give her your name and your congregation, and she will put you on, and your email, and she will put you on the email list. Okay? And it's a wonderful way to stay connected with the diocese and to find out what's going on, especially things that are going on like this day that we're having today. Okay? Davey, you've been great at monitoring the chat. A+ on Davey. A+. Fantastic.
Thank you. And the chat has been great. A couple of good puns as well, which I always appreciate. So thank you, Dio LA, for showing up with your sense of humor.
Okay, I'm putting Janet's email. Or you can put editor. Okay. So either one will work. It's in the chat now. Oh, PowerPoint and resource roundup would be very helpful. Okay, yes, absolutely. Okay, no problem. And we'll do that in English and in Spanish. Okay? Perfect. All right. So I think are we good, Davey?
We're good.
Good. Okay, so for those of you that would like to stay on, you can, stay on now. Go off and get your lunch, and we'll sit together for lunch at 12. If you want to go out and come back in again, no worries. We'll see you when you get back. Okay.